My name is Emily Parker. For 10 years, I was loyal. Then my CEO looked me in the eye and said, "Pack your bags, we don't need you anymore." He thought I would just disappear. He forgot that I knew every secret in that building. The day he fired me, a young woman sat in my chair before I even left. She smiled at me. That smile changed everything. You don't throw away someone who knows where all the bodies are buried. This is my story. My name is Emily Parker, and for 10 years, I gave everything to a company called OmniCorp Solutions. I started as an intern, fetching coffee and making copies, and I worked my way up to become the senior director of operations. I knew every server, every file, and every secret in that building. I thought I was family. I thought I was indispensable. I was wrong. Let me take you back to the beginning so you can understand who I was before all of this happened. I grew up in a small town in Nebraska, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a farmer. My parents taught me the value of hard work. They told me that if I worked harder than everyone else, if I kept my head down and did my job, I would be rewarded. I believed them. I believed in the system. I believed that good things came to good people who put in the time. My father was a quiet man, the kind who expressed love through action rather than words. He woke at 4 every morning to tend to the crops, and he came home long after dark, his hands calloused and dirty. He never complained. He never asked for thanks. He just worked day after day, year after year, because that was what a man did. He provided for his family. My mother was the same way. She taught 3rd grade for 30 years, shaping young minds, coming home exhausted but never too tired to make dinner or help me with my homework. They were good people, simple people, and they taught me that the world rewarded hard work. I moved to the city when I was 22, fresh out of college with a degree in business administration. I had no connections, no money, and no safety net. My parents scraped together what they could to help me get started, but it wasn't much. I took a Greyhound bus to the city with 2 suitcases and $800 in my pocket. I rented a tiny studio apartment in a neighborhood that wasn't safe, but it was all I could afford. I applied to dozens of companies, sending out resume after resume, getting rejection after rejection. OmniCorp was the only one that called me back. They offered me an internship, which meant I made coffee and ran errands for people who barely looked at me. I was paid next to nothing, but I didn't complain. I showed up early, stayed late, and learned everything I could. I watched how the executives talked, how they dressed, how they carried themselves. I studied the company structure, the chain of command, the unspoken rules. I made myself useful. I anticipated needs before they were expressed. I became the person people could count on. After 6 months, they offered me a full-time position in the operations department. I was thrilled. I cried when I got the news, right there in my tiny apartment, all alone. I called my parents and told them. My mother cried too. My father said he was proud of me, which from him was like a standing ovation. I worked in a cubicle the size of a closet, but I didn't care. I was in the door. I had a chance. Over the years, I moved up. I became a manager, then a director, then the senior director of operations. I oversaw dozens of people. I managed budgets worth millions of dollars. I was invited to meetings with the executive team. David Sterling, the CEO, started to notice me. He would nod at me in the hallway, sometimes even stop to ask my opinion on things. I felt seen. I felt valued. I felt like all those years of hard work were finally paying off. David was a charismatic man. He was in his early 50s, with silver hair and a smile that could charm anyone. He had built OmniCorp from nothing, and he loved to tell the story of how he started in his garage, working alone, building the company one client at a time. He was a hero to everyone who worked there. We believed in him. We believed in the mission. We believed we were building something important. I remember one Christmas party, David gave a speech about the OmniCorp family. He talked about how we were more than just employees, more than just colleagues. He said we were a family, bound together by shared purpose and shared sacrifice. He looked right at me when he said that, or at least I thought he did. I felt like I belonged. I felt like I mattered. But looking back now, I see the signs I ignored. The way he would change the subject when someone asked about certain accounts. The way he would get defensive when auditors came around. The way he surrounded himself with people who agreed with him and pushed out anyone who asked too many questions. I saw it, but I didn't want to see it. I was too busy being loyal. Too busy trying to prove myself. Too busy believing in the family that wasn't real. The Tuesday it happened started like any other day. I woke up at 6, made my coffee, and took the train into the city. I was in my office by 7:30, earlier than most people. I like the quiet of the morning, the time to think before the chaos of the day began. I was reviewing the quarterly projections, looking for ways to cut costs and improve efficiency. It was the kind of work I loved, solving puzzles, finding patterns, making things better. My office was my sanctuary. I had decorated it over the years, making it my own. Photos on the desk, a plant from my mother, a bookshelf full of industry publications. A window that looked out over the city, a view I had earned through years of service. I sat at my desk that morning, sipping my coffee, feeling content. Feeling secure, feeling like I had finally arrived. My phone rang at 10 o'clock. It was Margaret, David's secretary. She had been with the company almost as long as David had, and she was known for being cold and efficient. Her voice on the phone was even colder than usual. "Emily," she said, "Mr. Sterling would like to see you in his office." Now, I didn't think anything of it. David called me into his office all the time. Sometimes it was to discuss a project. Sometimes it was just to bounce ideas around. I grabbed my tablet, in case he wanted to look at data, and walked down the hallway. The walk to his office took me past rows of cubicles. I saw faces I knew, people I had hired, people I had trained, people I had promoted. I smiled and nodded at them. They smiled back. They had no idea what was about to happen. Neither did I. I knocked on David's massive oak door. It was a door that meant something. It was the door to the throne room, and everyone knew it. "Come in," he said. I stepped inside. The office was huge, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city. The skyline stretched for miles, a testament to the empire David had built. He was sitting behind his desk, but he wasn't alone. Standing next to him was a young woman I had never seen before. She was maybe 25, with sharp eyes and a tight smile. She was wearing an expensive suit, the kind you buy when you want people to know you matter. She looked like she had just graduated from some fancy business school, full of theories and no real experience. David didn't ask me to sit down. He didn't offer me a coffee. He just looked at me with those cold eyes, the ones I had seen him use on other people but never on me. "Emily," he said, "this is Jennifer Vance. She's your replacement." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud because I thought it was a joke. A bad joke, the kind you tell at someone's expense. I looked at Jennifer, waiting for her to laugh too, but she didn't. She just stood there with that tight smile, watching me. "A replacement for what?" I said. "I'm not going anywhere." David finally looked me in the eye. His gaze was flat, empty, like I was already gone. "Pack your bags, Emily. We don't need you anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself because my knees suddenly felt weak. The room seemed to spin for a moment. "David," I said, my voice shaking. "I've been here for 10 years. I built this operations department from the ground up. I know everything about this company. I know the systems, the vendors, the contracts. I know the people." "You can't just I can," he interrupted. "And I am. The company is going in a new direction. We need fresh blood, new ideas. Yours have gotten stale. Jennifer here is going to streamline things. She's going to bring a new perspective. Your severance package is already processed. Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal items." "Goodbye, Emily." Jennifer smiled at me. It was a smug, victorious smile. She knew she had won something, but she didn't know what she had stepped into. She didn't know the weight of the shoes she was trying to fill. She didn't know the secrets buried in the servers she was now supposed to manage. She just saw a chair and she wanted it. I stood there, frozen. My mind raced through 10 years of memories. All the nights I had stayed late, missing dinners with friends, missing holidays with my family. All the weekends I had sacrificed, coming in on Saturdays and Sundays to fix problems that weren't my fault. All the times I had covered for David's mistakes, cleaned up his messes, rewritten his reports, made him look like a genius in front of the board. I had done it all without complaint because I thought that was what loyalty meant. I thought he would remember. I thought he would reward me, and this was my reward. A 25-year-old with a fresh degree and a pat on the head as I was thrown out like trash. No warning, No discussion. No chance to say goodbye to the people I had worked with for a decade. Just pack your bags and get out. The door opened behind me. Two large men stepped in. I knew them both. They were security guards, and I had known them for years. We exchanged small talk in the mornings. They asked about my weekend. I asked about their kids. Now they stood there, looking at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. They were embarrassed. They were ashamed. But they had their orders. They walked me to my office. I moved on autopilot, my body going through the motions while my mind was somewhere else, trying to process what had just happened. I grabbed my family photos from the desk. I took the small plant my mother had given me when I got my first promotion. I gathered a few personal trinkets, things that meant nothing to anyone but me. I put them all in a cardboard box. While I was doing this, Jennifer walked into my office. She didn't knock. She just walked in like she already owned the place. She sat down in my chair. She spun around once, testing it out, and then she started opening drawers, looking through my files, making herself at home. She didn't even wait for me to leave. She acted like I was already invisible. I wanted to say something. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her that she had no idea what she was getting into, that she was stepping into a snake pit, that David Sterling would chew her up and spit her out just like he was doing to me. But I didn't say anything. I just picked up my box and walked out. As I was walking down the hallway toward the exit, I passed by the server room. The door was slightly ajar. I could hear the hum of the machines inside, the constant whir of fans cooling the servers that held the digital brain of Omni Corp. I stopped for a moment. I looked through the crack in the door at the rows and rows of black boxes, blinking lights, tangled cables. I knew those servers better than anyone. I had helped design the system. I had overseen every upgrade. I knew what was on those hard drives. I knew where the bodies were buried. In that moment, a switch flipped inside me. The shock and the pain and the humiliation all hardened into something else. Something cold and sharp. Something I had never felt before. It was like a door opening in my mind, and behind that door was a version of myself I had never met. A version that wasn't nice. A version that didn't forgive. A version that could hurt people back. David Sterling thought he could throw me away. He thought I would just disappear, go quietly into the night, find another job, and fade away like all the others he had discarded over the years. He didn't know me. He didn't know what I was capable of. He didn't know that I had spent 10 years quietly watching, quietly learning, quietly keeping records. Not for revenge, not then, just for self-preservation. But now, self-preservation looked a lot like destruction. I walked out of the building into the gray afternoon. The sky was overcast, threatening rain. I stood on the sidewalk, holding my box of worthless belongings, and I looked up at the glass tower I had helped build. 30 stories of steel and glass, and I knew every floor, every office, every secret. And I made a promise to myself right there on that sidewalk. David Sterling was going to learn a very hard lesson. You don't discard someone who knows all your secrets. You don't make an enemy out of the woman who holds the keys to your kingdom. That night, I sat in my small apartment, surrounded by boxes I hadn't bothered to unpack. I was still in my work clothes. I hadn't eaten. I just sat there on my couch, staring at the wall, replaying the scene in my head over and over again. Pack your bags, we don't need you anymore. The words echoed and burned. They played on a loop, each time cutting a little deeper. I thought about my parents. I thought about how proud they were of me, how they told everyone in town about their daughter, the executive. I thought about how I was going to have to call them and tell them I lost my job. I thought about the shame, the disappointment. I thought about how I had let them down, even though it wasn't my fault. That made me angrier than anything. I thought about David's secrets. Over the years, I had seen things. I had processed numbers that didn't add up. I had signed off on invoices that went to shell companies with no physical addresses. I had overheard phone calls through his office door when he thought no one was listening. I had read emails left on shared screens, emails that mentioned offshore accounts and payments that were labeled as consulting fees, but were clearly something else. I had seen the panic in his eyes when certain audits were announced, the way he would sweat, the way his hands would tremble until the audit passed and he could relax again. I never asked questions. I was loyal. I was family. I kept my mouth shut and did my job. I told myself it wasn't my business. I told myself that David knew what he was doing, that he was the genius, that I was just there to execute his vision. I told myself a lot of lies to sleep at night, but I remembered everything. I had a mind for details. I could look at a spreadsheet and spot the anomaly, the number that didn't belong. And I had a habit of keeping backups. Not for blackmail, not then. It was just my nature. I was cautious. I liked to have a paper trail, a safety net, just in case someone ever tried to blame me for something I didn't do. I saved copies of documents, forwarded emails to my personal account, kept screenshots of things that seemed off. It was self-preservation. It was covering my tracks. Now, it was my weapon. I stayed up all night, going through my files, organizing what I had. I made lists, categories, timelines. I built a map of David's crimes, a roadmap to his destruction. When the sun came up, I was still sitting there, but I wasn't tired. I was wired. I was ready. The next morning, I woke up at 5. I hadn't slept much, but I didn't feel tired. I felt wired, electric, like I was plugged into something bigger than myself. I got dressed in dark clothes, the kind that wouldn't stand out. I put my old employee badge in my pocket. I didn't know if it would still work, but I had to try. I took the train into the city. I got to the Omnicorp building at 6 in the morning, before most people arrived. The lobby was empty except for a security guard at the front desk. It was a different guard, not one of the ones who knew me. I walked past him with confidence, like I belonged there, and swiped my badge at the turnstile. The light turned green. It worked. David was so arrogant, so sure of his power, that he hadn't thought to deactivate my access. He probably assumed I was too broken to come back. He assumed wrong. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor, where the server room was located. The hallway was empty. The lights were on low, the way they always were in the early morning. I walked to the server room door and swiped my badge again. Green light. The door clicked open. I stepped inside. The room was cold, kept at a constant temperature to protect the equipment. The hum of the servers was loud, a constant white noise that filled my ears. Rows of black boxes stretched out in front of me, blinking lights in shades of green and blue. This was the brain of Omnicorp. Every email, every financial record, every secret was stored in these machines. And I knew exactly where to find what I was looking for. I had brought a portable hard drive, one with a huge amount of storage. I plugged it into a server and started copying files. It was going to take hours. There was too much data to transfer quickly. So I sat down on the cold floor, leaning against a rack of servers, and I waited. While the files copied, I thought about David. I thought about all the times I had defended him. When other employees complained about his temper, I made excuses. When the board asked tough questions, I helped him craft answers. When journalists poked around, I helped him spin the story. I was his shield, his loyal soldier, and he threw me away like garbage. I thought about the time he had a heart scare. He was in the hospital for 3 days, and I ran the department in his absence. I handled everything. I kept things running smoothly. I didn't ask for extra pay or recognition. I just did it because that's what family did. When he came back, he thanked me briefly and then moved on. I didn't mind. I didn't need thanks. I just needed to know that he appreciated me. He said he did. He lied. The hard drive beeped, signaling that one batch of files was done. I unplugged it and moved to another server. I copied financial records, internal emails, private memos, audit reports, and offshore account statements. I took everything that showed the truth about David Sterling. I took years of data, mountains of evidence. I wanted to leave nothing behind. It took 4 hours. By the time I finished, it was 10 in the morning, and people were starting to arrive at the office. I heard footsteps in the hallway, voices, the normal sounds of a workday beginning. I waited until the coast was clear, then I slipped out of the server room. I walked calmly to the elevator, down to the lobby, and out the front door. No one stopped me. No one looked at me twice. I was just another person in business casual, coming or going, invisible. I went home and spent the next week organizing the files, building a case. I created folders and subfolders, categorizing everything by type and by year. I read through emails I had never seen before, documents I had never had access to. The more I read, the angrier I got. David wasn't just a little crooked. He was a full-blown criminal. He had been embezzling money for years. He had created shell companies that billed Omnicorp for services that were never provided. He had funneled millions of dollars into personal accounts hidden in the Cayman Islands. He had bribed government officials to secure contracts, paying them off with cash and gifts. He had cooked the books, hiding losses and inflating revenues to keep the stock price high. He had lied to the board, lied to the shareholders, lied to everyone. The company he had built was a house of cards held together by lies and stolen money, and I had the proof. I also found things that were more personal. Emails between David and his mistress, a woman who worked in the marketing department. Emails where he complained about his wife, called her names, plotted how to hide money from her in the divorce that was surely coming. Emails where he mocked employees behind their backs, including me. In one email, he called me his faithful dog, the one who would fetch anything he asked for. Reading that email hurt more than the firing. It hurt because it was true. I had been his faithful dog, and he had kicked me. There were other emails, too. Emails about other employees he had fired over the years, the ones who asked too many questions or didn't show enough loyalty. He called them dead weight, liabilities, problems to be eliminated. He talked about them the way you might talk about old furniture you were throwing away. I realized then that I was just one in a long line of people he had used and discarded. I wasn't special. I wasn't family. I was just useful until I wasn't. I wasn't just going to leak this information randomly. I wanted it to hurt. I wanted it to destroy him completely. I wanted him to feel what I felt when he told me to pack my bags. I wanted him to lose everything, the way I had lost everything. I wanted him to know that the faithful dog had teeth. I started with the board of directors. I created an anonymous email account using a fake name and a temporary server. I spent days crafting the perfect message. I didn't want to give away too much at once. I wanted to plant a seed, let it grow, watch it spread. I attached a few key documents, just enough to get their attention. A spreadsheet showing money moving to the Cayman accounts. An email about the Holloway contract, the one where David mentioned the bribe. A memo from an auditor that had been buried, raising questions about missing funds. I wrote a short message: you should look into the Cayman accounts. Ask David about the Holloway contract. Follow the money. I sent it to each board member individually, using email addresses I had memorized over the years. Then I waited. The first few days, nothing happened. I checked the news obsessively, refreshing pages over and over. I started to worry that the board would just ignore the email, delete it, pretend they never saw it. Maybe they were in on it too. Maybe they were all crooks together. I didn't know. I just had to wait and see. I spent those days in a state of high anxiety. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just sat by my computer, watching, waiting. I second-guessed myself constantly. What if the emails could be traced back to me? What if I had made a mistake? What if David found out and came after me? I was scared, but I was also determined. I had come too far to turn back now, but I underestimated the board. Or maybe I overestimated their loyalty to David. Either way, something was happening behind the scenes. The first sign was a news article. A small business blog, the kind that covers local companies and industry gossip, picked up the story. I don't know how they got the information. Maybe one of the board members leaked it. Maybe someone else was talking. But the headline read, Omnicorp CEO under investigation for fraud. The article was short, full of speculation and few facts, but it was enough. The stock price started to drop. I watched the stock ticker all day, watching the numbers fall. It was a small drop at first, just a few points. But it was a start. It was proof that something was happening. I felt a thrill, a rush of adrenaline. This was really working. Then the real investigation began. The Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, opened a formal inquiry. They sent letters, requested documents, scheduled interviews. Federal agents showed up at Omnicorp's offices with warrants. I watched the news footage of them walking into the building, carrying boxes of files, their faces serious and determined. It was beautiful. They came in suits and windbreakers with FBI emblazoned on the back. They carried briefcases and looked important. The news cameras captured it all. David's building, his empire, being invaded by the federal government. I watched it on my laptop, eating popcorn, smiling. David tried to act confident. He issued a statement saying he welcomed the investigation, that he was confident it would clear his name, that he had done nothing wrong. But I could see the fear behind his eyes in the press photos. I could see the sweat on his forehead. He knew what they would find. He knew his house of cards was about to collapse. I watched it all from my apartment, eating popcorn, feeling a dark satisfaction with every new development. The news coverage grew. David's face was plastered on every screen, but not as a hero. As a suspect, as a criminal. The man who had built an empire was now the man who might go to prison. But I wasn't done. The board tried to distance themselves from David. They suspended him pending the investigation. They issued statements saying they were cooperating fully, that they were committed to transparency and good governance. They were trying to save the company, to cut the cancer out before it killed the patient. I couldn't let that happen. I wanted the whole company to burn. I wanted David to watch his life's work crumble into ash. I wanted him to know that every brick of that tower was built on lies, and I was the one pulling them out one by one. My next target was the public. I created a website. I spent days designing it, making it clean and professional, easy to navigate. I called it the OmniCorp Files. I uploaded everything. Every document, every email, every damning piece of evidence. I organized it by category, made it searchable, added summaries so anyone could understand what they were looking at. I wrote a simple introduction. This is the truth about David Sterling and OmniCorp. He stole from you. He lied to you. Now you get to see who he really is. I launched the website on a Monday morning, the time when people are most likely to be online, scrolling through news, avoiding work. I posted links on social media, on forums, in comment sections. I sent the link to every news outlet I could think of, and then I waited. The website went viral within hours. It spread like wildfire. People shared it, talked about it, argued about it. News outlets around the country picked it up. Reporters combed through the documents, finding new angles, new stories. The story exploded. It wasn't just a business scandal anymore. It was a spectacle. It was a drama. It was a cautionary tale. People were outraged. Shareholders filed lawsuits claiming they had been defrauded. Clients canceled their contracts, not wanting to be associated with a company run by a criminal. Employees started quitting in droves, not wanting their resumes tainted by association. The company bled talent and money. I watched the news coverage constantly. I saw reporters standing outside the OmniCorp building, interviewing former employees, talking to analysts, speculating about what would happen next. I saw the stock price plummet, day after day, until it was worth almost nothing. I saw the company that had been my whole life for 10 years collapsing in real time. David tried to fight back. He held a press conference. I watched it live on my laptop, my heart pounding. He stood at a podium, looking tired and pale, dark circles under his eyes. His suit was wrinkled. His hair was a mess. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. He denied everything. He said the documents were forgeries, created by someone with a grudge. He said he was the victim of a conspiracy, that people were out to get him because he was successful. He said he had done nothing wrong and would be proven innocent, but no one believed him. The evidence was too overwhelming. Every time he opened his mouth, another document surfaced that contradicted him. Reporters shouted questions. He stumbled over his answers. He looked like a cornered animal, desperate and afraid. I watched that press conference with a smile on my face. I saw the sweat on his forehead, the tremor in his hands, the fear in his eyes. This was the man who had told me to pack my bags. This was the man who thought he was untouchable. This was the man who had called me his faithful dog. Now he was crumbling, live on national television, and the whole world was watching. It was beautiful. The company didn't survive. OmniCorp Solutions filed for bankruptcy 3 months later. I read the news article announcing it, and I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. Thousands of people lost their jobs. People I had worked with, people I had hired, people I had trained. They were innocent, caught in the crossfire of a war they didn't start. I felt bad for them, but not bad enough to stop. This was bigger than them. This was about justice. This was about making David pay. I thought about Sarah, the receptionist who had been with the company for 15 years. She was a single mother, raising 2 kids on her own. She lost her job. I thought about Mark, the IT guy who had helped me countless times, always with a smile. He had just bought a house. He lost his job. I thought about all of them, the good people who didn't deserve any of this. They were casualties of war, and I was the one who started the war. But I also thought about David. I thought about how he had used all of them, just like he had used me. I thought about how he had built his empire on their backs, then discarded them when they were no longer useful. I thought about how he had taken their loyalty and their hard work and turned it into offshore accounts and bribes and mistresses. They were victims of David long before they were victims of me. I was just the one who finally held him accountable. The building I had walked into for 10 years stood empty. I drove past it one day just to see. The windows were dark. The parking lot was empty except for a few abandoned cars. Weeds were already starting to grow through the cracks in the pavement. It looked like a ghost town, a monument to greed and corruption. I parked across the street and just sat there, looking at it. I remembered the first day I walked through those doors, nervous and excited, full of hope. I remembered the friends I had made, the victories we had shared, the late nights and early mornings. I remembered believing that I was part of something important. It all felt like a dream now, a distant memory of a person I used to be. David Sterling was arrested at his home. I watched the footage on the news. They showed him being led out in handcuffs, his head down, his wife standing in the doorway with tears streaming down her face. He was charged with embezzlement, fraud, and bribery. He faced decades in prison. The news anchors talked about the fall of a titan, the downfall of a man who had once been on the cover of business magazines. They showed old photos of him at galas and award ceremonies, shaking hands with politicians, smiling with celebrities. Then they showed him in handcuffs, being put into the back of a police car. It was a hell of a fall. His wife filed for divorce a week later. I read about it in a gossip column. She was taking everything, the house, the cars, the bank accounts. She was leaving him with nothing. His friends disappeared. The people who had laughed at his jokes and praised his genius were suddenly nowhere to be found. He was alone, the way he had made me feel alone. I thought that would be the end. I thought I would feel satisfied, complete, like I had done what needed to be done. And for a while, I did. I walked around my apartment with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. I slept better. I ate better. I started to think about the future, about what I wanted to do next. But there was one more piece of business. Jennifer Vance, the young woman who had smiled at me while I was being escorted out of the building. The young woman who had sat in my chair before I even left. She had lost her job too, of course. The replacement job lasted only a few weeks before the whole company collapsed. I wondered where she was, what she was doing, if she had learned anything from the experience. I didn't have to wonder for long. A few months after the bankruptcy, I was in a coffee shop near my apartment. I had started a small consulting business, nothing fancy, just enough to keep me busy and pay the bills. I worked with small companies, helping them organize their operations, streamline their processes. It was honest work, and it felt good to use my skills for something positive. I was sitting at a table near the window, reading a book and drinking my coffee when someone sat down across from me. I looked up, annoyed at the intrusion, and my heart stopped. It was Jennifer. She looked different. The sharp, confident woman I had seen in David's office was gone, completely gone. In her place was someone tired, worn down, defeated. Her clothes were cheap, from a discount store. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her eyes were hollow, empty, like she hadn't slept in weeks. "Emily," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "I need to talk to you." I closed my book. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, waiting. "I know it was you," she said. "The files, the website, I know you did it." Still, I said nothing. I just watched her, studying her face, looking for any sign of the smugness she had shown me that day. There was none, just desperation. She leaned forward, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup she had brought with her. Her voice was desperate, pleading, "I lost everything. My career is ruined. No one will hire me because my name was associated with Omnicorp. I was only there for a few weeks, but it doesn't matter. That association is enough. I have student loans, rent bills, I'm drowning. I just wanted you to know that. I just wanted you to see what you did to me." I felt a flicker of something. Not pity exactly. Pity would have been too soft. It was more like a strange sense of completion. She had come to me, the victim, to beg for sympathy. She didn't understand that she was just a pawn. She didn't understand that her suffering was collateral damage in a war she didn't start. She thought she was the main character in this story, but she was just a footnote. "Jennifer," I said quietly, "do you remember the day David fired me? Do you remember how you smiled at me? You sat in my chair before I even left the building. You were so happy to take what was mine. You didn't know me. You didn't know anything about me. But you smiled because you thought you had won." Her face crumpled, tears welled in her eyes. "I was just doing my job," she whispered. I didn't know any of it. I didn't know what David had done. I didn't know about the fraud. I was just a new employee, excited about the opportunity. I didn't mean to hurt you." I nodded. "I believe you," I said. "I do. You didn't know. You were just ambitious and young, and you saw a chance and you took it. I understand that. I was young once too, but that doesn't change anything. You were there. You were part of it. You sat in my chair and smiled while I was being thrown out. And now you're facing the consequences of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's not my problem. That's life. Life isn't fair. You should know that by now." She started to cry, not loud sobs, just quiet tears streaming down her cheeks. She wiped them away with the back of her hand, embarrassed. "Please," she said. "Please help me. You have connections. You know people. Can't you put in a good word for me somewhere? Can't you tell them I wasn't involved?" I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about all the people who had lost their jobs because of what I did. The innocent people, the ones who had nothing to do with David's crimes. They were suffering too, but I couldn't save them all. I couldn't fix everything. And Jennifer, of all people, was not my responsibility. I thought about giving her advice, telling her how to rebuild, how to move on, but I didn't owe her anything. She had shown me no kindness when I was at my lowest. She had sat in my chair and smiled. That image was burned into my memory, and it wasn't going away. I stood up. I put some money on the table for my coffee, enough to cover it and a tip. I looked down at her one last time. She looked small, broken, pathetic. "David Sterling thought he could throw me away like garbage," I said. "He learned that you can't do that to people. You never know what someone is capable of. You never know what secrets they carry. You never know what they're willing to do when they have nothing left to lose. Remember that, Jennifer. It's the only advice I have for you. It's the only thing I can give you." I walked out of the coffee shop and left her sitting there, crying into her coffee cup. I didn't look back. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel satisfied. I just felt done. Like a chapter of my life was finally, completely closed. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my consulting business. I worked with small companies, startups, family-owned businesses. I helped them build systems, organize their operations, plan for growth. It was satisfying work, the kind of work I had loved at Omni Corp before everything went wrong. My clients appreciated me. They listened to my advice. They treated me with respect. I started to heal. The anger that had burned inside me for so long began to fade. Not disappear completely, but fade to a manageable level. I could think about David without feeling rage. I could think about Omnicorp without feeling pain. I was moving on, but I still followed the news. I couldn't help myself. I read about David's trial, which started about a year after his arrest. It was a media circus. Reporters packed the courtroom. The prosecution laid out their case methodically, using the documents I had provided. They showed the shell companies, the offshore accounts, the bribes, the fraud. They called witnesses who testified against him. They played recordings of phone calls where he discussed illegal activities. David's lawyers tried to defend him. They argued that he was a victim, that the documents were stolen, that the whole case was built on illegally obtained evidence. But the judge ruled that the evidence was admissible, and the trial continued. I thought about testifying. I thought about going to the courthouse and telling my story, about how I had been fired, about how I had taken the files, about why I did it. But I decided against it. I didn't want the attention. I didn't want my face on the news. I didn't want to be known as the woman who brought down David Sterling. I just wanted to disappear, to live my life, to move on. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Then came the verdict. Guilty on all counts. I watched the news coverage as the verdict was announced. David stood in the courtroom, his face ashen, his hands shaking. His lawyers tried to comfort him, but he pushed them away. He looked like a man who had just been told he was going to die. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in federal prison. 25 years. He would be in his late 70s when he got out, if he got out at all. His wife had already left him. His children wouldn't speak to him. His friends were gone. He had nothing, the same nothing he had tried to give me. I watched him being led away in handcuffs, and I felt nothing, no satisfaction. No joy, no relief, just a vast, empty nothing. He was gone, but it didn't bring back my 10 years. It didn't undo the pain. It didn't make me whole again. It just meant that he was suffering too. I started to think about the nature of revenge. Was it worth it? Had I gained anything from destroying David? I had my freedom, yes. I had my own business. I had my self-respect. But I had also lost something. I had lost the innocent part of myself, the part that believed in loyalty and hard work and the goodness of people. That part was gone forever, killed on a Tuesday afternoon when David told me to pack my bags. Sometimes I wondered if there was another way. If I could have just walked away, found another job, moved on with my life. Would I be happier? Would I be more at peace? I didn't know. I would never know. The path I chose was the path I walked, and there was no going back. My name is Emily Parker. I am no longer a corporate executive. I am no longer anyone's loyal soldier. I am no longer the faithful dog. I am a woman who was told she wasn't needed, and I proved them wrong. I proved that I was the most important person in that company, not because of what I built, but because of what I knew. Because of what I was willing to do with that knowledge. Revenge is a strange thing. It doesn't bring back your job. It doesn't undo the pain of being discarded. It doesn't fill the empty hours when you wake up in the middle of the night and remember. It doesn't give you back the years you wasted being loyal to someone who never deserved it. But it does something else. It reminds you that you have power. It reminds you that you are not a victim unless you choose to be. It reminds you that even when you're at your lowest, even when you've lost everything, you can still fight back. You can still make a difference. You can still change the world, even if it's just by burning down one small corner of it. David Sterling is in prison now. I read about his trial in the newspapers. He was convicted on all charges. He'll be old when he gets out, if he gets out at all. His wife divorced him. His children won't speak to him. His friends are gone. He has nothing. The same nothing he tried to give me. OmniCorp is a cautionary tale taught in business schools. Professors use it as an example of corporate fraud, of what happens when greed goes unchecked. Students write papers about it, analyzing what went wrong, who was to blame. They don't know my name. They don't know the role I played. They just know the story of a company that collapsed under the weight of its own corruption. And I am free. I am truly free for the first time in my life. I have my own business. I have my own clients. I answer to no one. I make my own hours, set my own rates, choose my own projects. I work with people who appreciate me, who value my skills, who treat me with respect. It's not as glamorous as the corner office. It doesn't pay as well. But it's mine, all mine. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I walk to the empty building where I spent 10 years of my life. It's not far from my apartment. I stand across the street and I look at it. The windows are dark. The parking lot is empty. Weeds grow through the cracks in the pavement. Graffiti covers the walls. It's a ruin, a monument to hubris and greed. I stand there for a long time, just looking. I remember the girl I used to be, the one who believed in hard work and loyalty. The one who thought that if she just did her job well enough, she would be rewarded. The one who trusted David Sterling, who believed in his vision, who thought he was a hero. That girl is gone now. She died on a Tuesday afternoon when David told her to pack her bags. In her place is someone harder, someone colder, someone who understands the real rules of the game. The rules David taught me. The rules I used to destroy him. I don't feel guilty. I don't lose sleep. I did what I had to do. He started the war. I just finished it. And in the end, the woman they didn't need anymore was the one who brought the whole empire down. That's the thing about secrets. They're heavy. They're dangerous. They're like explosives, sitting quietly in the dark, waiting for someone to light the fuse. And if you're not careful, if you mistreat the people who know your secrets, if you throw them away like garbage, you never know when they might decide to light that fuse. David Sterling learned that lesson. Jennifer Vance learned that lesson. And I hope, somewhere out there, other CEOs are learning it too. Be careful who you discard. Be careful who you hurt. Because you never know what someone is capable of. You never know what secrets they carry. You never know what they'll do when they have nothing left to lose. I learned that lesson well, and I made sure David Sterling learned it too. My name is Emily Parker, and this is my story. But the story doesn't end there. Life goes on, even after revenge is complete. I want to tell you about what happened next, about the years that followed, about how I rebuilt myself from the ashes. After the trial, after the bankruptcy, after Jennifer's visit, I threw myself into my consulting work. I built a reputation as someone who could fix broken systems, who could take chaotic operations and make them run smoothly. My client list grew. I hired 2 employees, then 3, then 5. I moved out of my apartment and bought a small house with a garden. I started to live again, but I never forgot. I never stopped watching. I kept files on David, on his associates, on anyone who had been part of the Omni Corp machine. I don't know why. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the need to be prepared, just in case. I had learned that the world was dangerous, that people could hurt you, and I was never going to be caught off guard again. One day, about 3 years after the bankruptcy, I got a letter. It was from David. He was in prison and he had written to me. I almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. The letter was long, handwritten on prison stationery. He apologized. He said he had made mistakes. He said he was sorry for how he had treated me. He said he understood why I did what I did, and he didn't blame me. He asked for my forgiveness. I read the letter 3 times. I looked for the catch, the manipulation, the hidden agenda. But there was none. It was just a broken man, sitting in a prison cell, reaching out to someone he had wronged. He was old now, gray, sick. He had lost everything. He had nothing left to lose. I thought about writing back. I thought about telling him that I forgave him, that I wished him well, that I hoped he found peace. But I couldn't. The words wouldn't come. The anger was gone, but the forgiveness wasn't there either. There was just emptiness, a void where feelings used to be. I threw the letter away. I didn't respond. I didn't acknowledge it. I just moved on with my life. Years passed. My business grew. I became successful in my own right, not as someone else's loyal soldier, but as my own boss. I traveled. I made friends. I dated, though I never got serious with anyone. I had learned that people could hurt you, and I wasn't willing to take that risk again. Then one day, I got another letter. This one was from a lawyer. David had died in prison. Heart attack. He had left behind a will, and in that will, he had left me something. A small amount of money, nothing significant, but also a box of personal items. The lawyer asked if I wanted them. I said no. I didn't want anything that had belonged to David Sterling. I didn't want reminders of that time in my life. I had moved on. I was free. But the lawyer insisted. He said David had been specific. He wanted me to have this box. It was important to him, so I agreed to take it just to end the conversation. The box arrived a week later. It was small, cardboard, taped shut. I opened it in my kitchen, curious despite myself. Inside were a few things. A photo of David and me at a company event, both of us smiling. A copy of the first report I had ever written for him, the one that had impressed him enough to promote me, and a letter. I opened the letter. It was dated a few weeks before he died. He wrote about his regrets, his mistakes, his failures. He wrote about the person he used to be, the person he became, the person he wished he had been. He wrote about me. He said that I was the best employee he ever had. He said that I was loyal, hardworking, brilliant. He said that firing me was the biggest mistake of his life, not because of what it cost him, but because of what it did to me. He said he had created a monster, and that monster was him, not me. He said he hoped I had found happiness, that I had moved on, that I had built a good life. He ended the letter with 3 words, I am sorry. I sat in my kitchen, holding that letter, and I cried. I cried for the first time in years. I cried for the girl I used to be, the one who believed in hard work and loyalty. I cried for the man David used to be, the one who had built something from nothing. I cried for all the wasted years, all the pain, all the destruction. But I also cried because, in that moment, I realized something. I had won. Not just the battle, but the war. David was gone, but I was still here. I had survived. I had rebuilt. I had found a way to live again. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. I folded the letter and put it back in the box. I put the box on a shelf in my closet where I wouldn't see it every day, but where I would know it was there. A reminder of where I had been, of what I had done, of who I had become. My name is Emily Parker. I am 52 years old. I have my own business, my own home, my own life. I am content if not happy. I am at peace if not fulfilled. I have learned that revenge doesn't heal you. It doesn't make you whole. It just evens the score. And sometimes that's enough. David Sterling taught me many things. He taught me that loyalty is often one-sided. He taught me that the people you trust the most can hurt you the deepest. He taught me that the world isn't fair, and that waiting for it to be fair is a fool's errand. But he also taught me something else. He taught me that I am strong. He taught me that I am capable. He taught me that even when you lose everything, you can still fight back. You can still win. You can still survive. I don't think about him much anymore. He's a ghost from my past, a memory that fades a little more each year. But sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about that Tuesday afternoon. I think about the words, "Pack your bags, we don't need you anymore." And I smile because they did need me. They just didn't know it until it was too late. That's the thing about being indispensable. You don't realize it until you're gone. And by then, it's too late to do anything about it. David Sterling learned that lesson. Jennifer Vance learned that lesson. And now, I hope you've learned it too. Be careful who you discard. Be careful who you hurt. Because you never know what someone is capable of. You never know what secrets they carry. You never know what they'll do when they have nothing left to lose. I learned that lesson well. And I made sure David Sterling learned it too. My name is Emily Parker, and this is my story.